As the title of this video alludes to, I have a real problem on my hands at the moment, and one that is only getting bigger and bigger, and I really need your help to get through it.
Tens of thousands.
But, my lord, there is no such force.
A new power is rising. Its victory is at hand. This night, the land will be stained with the blood of Rohan. March to Helm's Deep. Leave none alive. To war!
Hey guys, Rich from Rich Gaming. Hope everyone is doing fantastically well. And yes, it is a problem I'm sure many of you out there suffer from. And it is the fact that our backlogs are just too big. We are, of course, talking about the number of miniatures we have left to paint. As you saw from that little clip there, I've put together all of my miniatures, or at least all of my built miniatures. I have ignored for the moment anything that's still on a sprue, but I've put everything together and I'm left with just under 1,000 miniatures that need painting. And I have a plan to get through every single one of them. But I'm going to need you to help me out. Why do I need you to help me out? Well, I am terrible, guys. I am absolutely terrible at starting things off and then getting halfway through them and then just leaving them. As you can see by some of these various miniatures that I've got left to paint, some of them are not even primed. Some of them have been built and primed, zenithal highlighted. Some of them have been primed and half painted and then left. And I'm absolutely terrible at not finishing a project and then moving on to the next one. Now, to give you an idea, I spend roughly between, I would say, 3 and 5 hours per miniature when I'm painting. Now, that may be more for some of my Marvel Crisis Protocol miniatures. You know, I may spend upwards of 5, 6, 7, maybe even sometimes 10 hours painting a miniature for those. But then, you know, you look at something like Lord of the Rings, for example, where it's a little bit more rank and file. It may be as little as 2 or 3 hours per miniature, depending on what it is I'm doing. So that's not going to wash. If I do some quick maths at an average of, let's say, 3 hours, that is 3,000 hours worth of painting that I need to put in to get all of these armies finished. And that doesn't include anything that turns up over the next few months as well. Now, initially, I had said that I wanted to get these finished by Christmas, but I really didn't think I had as many miniatures as I did. So I have set myself a goal to have these finished by the first quarter of 2023. So up until the end of March 2023. And I think that is more than enough time, hopefully, at least using some of these new methods that I'm going to talk about to be able to do that. Now, to help with this, what I've done is I have broken down each of the sort of miniatures into various lots. Now, that is for a number of reasons. First of all, there are some miniatures that are, as I mentioned, a little bit more rank and file. So, for example, I have bundled all of my Mandalorians together from my Shadow Collective army. I'm currently painting a warband or a battle companies for the Rangers, and also I've got some Isengard troops left, and they're all going to use very similar colour schemes. I'm going to be reusing the paints time and time again. I've then also bundled some others together just because it breaks them up. So for example, each of the Imperial assault sets that I've got, I'm going to be looking at each one of those sets in turn and going through and painting each one of the minis from each particular set. So again, it lets me kind of tick off things, and I can see some progression there. As far as the MCP, I've put them into various bundles. You can see them on screen at the moment. We've got some mutants in there. We've got some shield vengers, I think it is, that's in there. Some sort of general bad guys, some convocation types together. But again, I wanted to put these and break these down into smaller, easier to paint models, just so I can see that progression and I can start ticking them off. And you'll see on screen now everything that I've done, all of the various lots. And where I need your help, guys, is I need some help picking what will be next. So every week or so, because I'm hoping each one of these lots will take me no more than a week or so. Some of the bigger ones, so the Separatist army, for example, may take me a little bit longer. But again, I want to do all of them together because they're going to have some similar common themes throughout them, some common paints that I'm using. And again, some of the armies are in different states to others. The B1s in this are not painted fully, but they've got a good base coat down, but they need bases doing, they need weapons painting, all that sort of stuff. The little intricate bits that take that little bit longer. So what I'm going to do is every week or so, I'm going to put up a poll with 4 or 5 different options, and I need you guys to vote on that and let me know what to paint next. Now, when it comes to how I'm going to be painting these characters, typically I would base a character in black. I would do a zenithal highlight of grey sort of from the sides, and then a final zenithal highlight using white ink from above, and then paint, building up layers. I don't use any washers. It's a fairly slow process, but it's one that I find quite therapeutic, and it's one that I really enjoy. But when I have these miniatures to get through, it's not really viable to do, at least not for all of them. And also some of these I would class more as board game miniatures. If we look at the Hero Quest, and again with the Journeys in Middle-earth and also with the Imperial Assault, they are board games. I would prefer to have them painted. It would make me happy if they were all painted. But I don't need to use that same technique that takes much, much longer when I'm building up, or when I'm painting, sorry, some of these other miniatures. So what method am I going to be using? Well, as I mentioned, I'm going to be using a couple of different tricks up my sleeve. I've just recently bought a whole bunch of inks that I'm going to be, or different inks that I'm going to be using through the airbrush for some models. I do have the Army Painter speed paints, and I've also just increased, these are not all of them, but I've just increased the number of contrast paints that I've got here as well as using normal acrylic paints. But for the vast majority of models, what I'm going to be using is something called the slap chop technique. Now, you guys may have seen this, but basically I've watched a couple of videos over the last month or so about this, and I want to give a big shout out to the Miniature Hobbyist. I saw their recent video they put up on slap chop, and it really made me think I can use this and get through the minis significantly quicker than what it would be if I was to go in and paint them in my normal way. So what are we talking about? Well, let's take a quick look at this first example, because I have actually painted up or mostly painted up the first sort of batch, and it is the Winter Guard from Marvel Crisis Protocol. So these are the Winter Guard then. What have we done here? We have basically a black prime using the airbrush, using my Vallejo black primer, and then once that's nice and dry, we then got a light grey, and we did a fairly heavy dry brush all over. Then once that was dry, we got a brilliant white. We used the AK Interactive brilliant white, and then did a final dry brush to try and pick out all of those highlighter bits. So once those highlights are dry, we then start to use our paint. So I've got the Gore Grunter Fur contrast paint here. This is what I'm going to be using for Ursa Major, and in this example I'm basically just going to be putting this all over the model, and you'll see once we come back to the model and once it's dry, how that finishes and how that looks. It does look a little bit sort of sepia-ish at the moment, but as I say, once it's dry. Now what I'm trying to do here is make sure that we don't have any excessive pooling. I've seen people use contrast paint before and sort of really pile it on, which is okay, but as you can see, what I'm trying to do is make sure that we don't end up with too much paint all over. So I very simply put this all over the model, and you can already see where those dark parts are, where those highlight parts are, and how much additional contrast it brings into the model. And it ends up finishing with a really nice finish. So next up then, we're going to be using another Citadel colour contrast paint. This one is going to be Blood Angels Red, and this is the base coat that we're going to be using for the Red Guardian. Again, make sure that you've got a pretty good brush. I like to make sure, I mean, this is a size 4 brush that I'm using here, but it's got a very good tip on it. It's a Rosemary & Co brush, and all we're going to do once again is go over those main parts, making sure that we keep everywhere that is not going to be red. So in this case, it's going to be his star, his belt, his little bit across the top of his helmet, and then obviously his face, boots and arms, just making sure that we get into all those little places. And you can see how that contrast paint flows into those little recesses, but because we're not using too much, it's not dripping down the model, it's not going into the places that we don't want it to go. And yeah, we'll finish off by covering the full model and seeing what it looks like. So we're going to take out our Flesh Tearers Red next, and this is going to be for Crimson Dynamo. Again, we've gone through the exact same process, and again what we want to do is use that contrast paint, not getting too much on our brush, and making sure that we get it onto all of the areas where we want that red to be. I once again realise that I'm painting off camera, so give it a second and it will come back. But as you can see, again, we're not putting too much on our brush, but you can already see that shading that we've done in there, and then those highlights that we've got because of that final dry brush of white that we did. So once again, finish the entire model and then we'll come back and see what it looks like at the end. So just a quick side-by-side comparison then of Crimson Dynamo and Red Guardian, and you can really see how much the colours are popping in the highlighted parts, and how much shading we've managed to get in there without doing anything other than some dry brushing on those models. Now obviously they need tidying up a little bit, they're still not quite dry, but I think so far they're looking really good. So guys, for each of my models then, I went in and did some sort of final finishing touches. There was all of the white parts on Red Guardian. I used the Dela and Rowney white ink for that. It seemed to work really well. I did need to thin it down a little bit. And then for the bases, I decided to use a technical paint from Citadel. This was the Strickland Mud. The reason why is I wanted this to look more like a sort of snowy-esque type Soviet Union scene, rather than just the sort of generic New York City bases. And yeah, here is the final products. So as you can see, I think they've turned out pretty well. For Crimson Dynamo, I used a gunmetal silver from Army Painter, just with a black wash of Nuln Oil over the top there. And then I used that same Imperial Fist yellow contrast paint for his little star in the middle. Didn't bother with anything on the face. Moving on to Ursa Major, again, we just used that white ink just to pick out his teeth and his claws. Now we could go back in there should we want, pick out his ears a little more, maybe add a little bit more colour to the claws, teeth and feet. But again, for that sort of tabletop standard that I'm looking for at the moment, I think it works absolutely fine. Next up then, Red Guardian. I'm okay with this the way it turned out. This is the first time that I tried using the flesh tone, and it's fair to say that it didn't work very well. I was using Dark Oath Flesh, but I think of everything that I've learned so far, really the flesh tones in those contrasts don't work particularly well, or at least the way that I have done them. Maybe they need to be lightened up a little bit. Use that white ink again on his boots, gloves, belt, and the little sort of crosshair bit, or not crosshair, but sort of mohawk bit on his helmet. Again, happy with the way they turned out. And then for his base, I just used a Basilicanum grey for that stone. Again, no other dry brushing or anything else over the top there, and I think that worked out pretty well. Finally then was Darkstar, and apologies we didn't get a lot of video footage of painting her. That yellow you can see is not great. I do like the purple. This was the Hive Dweller purple from the Army Painter Speed Paint range, but that yellow is quite dark. For her black suit I used the same Dela and Rounded, but this time the black ink. Again, I watered it down about 50-50, so 1 part ink, and actually 1/4 water, 1/4 flow improver, and that worked really well. I did actually use that flesh tone for her hair, and then once that had done, I went back over with the Iodine yellow or iodine yellow, and I'm okay with it. I think maybe the lighter colours, rather than a black spray or a black prime, it may be that we need to just start with that grey prime, or maybe we do that zenithal highlight just to try and lighten it up a little bit, because of the three this is the one that I am the most disappointed with, but I think overall for the time it took, they have looked really good. And speaking of time, guys, the total time spent on these 4 miniatures was just under 2 hours. Let's say 2 hours in total if we were to count the priming and the dry brushing time. So all in all, guys, pretty good. Managing to get 4 miniatures out in the space in less than what it would normally take me to do 1 miniature in total is, for me, really, really good. Are they the greatest painted miniatures in the world? Absolutely not. Do they look better, and will they look better on the tabletop than unpainted miniatures? Absolutely. So they can be done really quickly, really easily, and that is good for me to know as I carry on throughout my campaign. So what are we going to do next? Well, it is over to you guys, and I've put together a couple of different options for you so you can pick the next ones that I'm going to paint. So let's take a look at what those options are. So guys, the first option for you of things that I'm going to paint up next is going to be the Imperial Assault expansion Twin Shadows. Now, the box itself comes with 2 hero figures, 4 heavy stormtrooper figures, and 4 Tusken Raiders. You can see those here, but I also bought some expansions for this, little character expansions, because in Imperial Assault there are some heroes and things that are they use little sort of counter tokens to represent them, or you can buy the actual figures. So in this one we got C-3PO, we got R2-D2, we got Han Solo, and we've also got Boba Fett, and I think Kane Somos as well, who's a Imperial Stormtrooper commander. So we'll be including those in this. You can see all the characters there. So that is the first option for you. Okay, our second option is one that I've been really excited about painting, hence why I've put this in first. But it is from Simon's Marvel United, and it is the Deadpool expansion. So in this one, I get to paint 5 different versions, or 4 different versions, sorry, of Deadpool. We've got Deadpool Hero, Lady Deadpool, a Deadpool villain, the Challenge Deadpool version, riding that really cool looking uniform, and then lastly, Bob, Agent of Hydra. So yeah, that's going to be your second option. Option number 3 then is going to be from Marvel Crisis Protocol, and it is going to be all my leftover mutants. So again, they're all in varying states of painted, but we have from right to left, we've got Cassandra Nova, we've got Domino, we've got Jane, we've got Gambit, we've got an even unprimed Honey Badger, we've got Rogue, who's been slightly painted, X-23, Magic, and then at the back there we do have Omega Red as well. So that's going to be your third option. And then last but by no means least, I have decided to put my entire Separatist army in there. Now these guys have already had some models painted in various different guises, but there's a lot of little intricate work that needs to be done on them. All of the basing needs doing, and then the big thing is that AAT Trade Federation tank that really needs some TLC to bring it up to scratch. So guys, they are going to be your 4 options. There'll be a poll up on community, so you can head on over there and vote. We'll keep voting open for the next the next maybe 3 or 4 days. And then once it's closed, I will start painting on whichever one is the winner. And we're going to keep this going, guys, until I have finished all of my models. So we had just under 1,000. I think it was 997 was the total number of miniatures. We finished our first 4 with the Red Guardians, so we're now down to 993. So yeah, not too far away. But hopefully, guys, you've enjoyed this. If you did like the video, please do leave a like. It really, really does help. If you want to support the channel even further, we do have our Patreon up and running, where from as little as £1 a month, you can support the ongoing running of the channel. And there's some extra things in there as well that you get depending on the level that you choose. If you haven't checked out our Discord yet, please head over and check that out. Everything from Marvel Crisis Protocol through to we're starting a Middle-earth strategy battle game at the moment on there. We've got some battle companies things going on, loads of events that get posted on there, plus a whole bunch of other content creators as well. So again, link down in the description below, and go check that out. Our merch store has just had some new merch put on there. So we've got the brand new Bestest Boy beanie, and we've also got the Strongest Avenger hat. So go and check those out as well. And again, anything that we get from the merch store, Patreon, everything else, all goes back into the channel. So thank you to all of those that have already supported me, either by buying merch or by supporting us on Patreon. And as always, guys, it leaves me with just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, bye for now.